came in as a boy not breathing and felt cold to the touch.
He was sneaking food that was not necessary. It was solved by placing locks on the fridge, freezer, and pantry.
His weight was 69 pounds. That was essentially 0 percentile.
How does a 15-year-old child in Michigan in July have hypothermia?
I can close my eyes and see those photographs. I'll see them forever.
Shanda was always very calculating, like her mother.
Something's wrong, but it's not murder.
Every time we turned around, he was sneaking something.
Did that refer to you because he was hungry?
Just outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan, in Norton Shores, stands an ordinary-looking house on a quiet cul-de-sac, indistinguishable from its neighbors. But behind those unremarkable walls, a horrific crime unfolded, one whose abject cruelty would shock even the most seasoned detectives. The crime could not have occurred without an accomplice, leaving police to grapple with a chilling question. Was this person a willing participant, or had they been manipulated into torture and then murder by a person whose actions can only be described as pure evil?
My son's not breathing. He's 15. He's still on hunger strike.
The call came in as a boy not breathing and felt cold to the touch.
And I've been checking on all night because he was feeling good last night, and I woke up feeling so up this morning, and he's not breathing.
Sean Stefanich of the Norton Shores Police Department was one of the first officers to respond to the scene. He entered the two-story residence and descended a set of stairs into a bedroom where he was greeted by a horrific sight.
Those kind of fishy calls.
That's what I hear. He looks like he's 50 pounds.
What do you say, 15 days more sick? That's more than 15 days.
I was thinking.
At the officer's feet lay the emaciated body of a teenage boy, later identified as 15-year-old Timothy Ferguson, dressed in a sweater and jeans that hung loosely from his skeletal frame.
I've dealt with hundreds of homicide investigations. I've seen crime scenes. I've seen dead bodies. I've seen everything. And nothing even comes close to this. The pictures of him in the home and the pictures of him at the autopsy are just haunting.
After viewing the body, Officer Stefanich spoke with Timothy's mother, Shanda Vander Ark, as he attempted to piece together what had happened. According to Shanda, Timothy was so skinny because he had been on a hunger strike.
I had no idea. I would have taken him in or something.
You said the last time you saw him was 5:30 this morning?
She recalled that she had had some contact with him the night before, and he had said something to her, and she tried to give him a hug, and he said, "No, Mama," and kind of pushed her away, and then he just went downstairs to his bedroom.
Shanda said she heard Timothy fall off the bunk around 5:30 a.m., and when she found him unresponsive, she immediately called 911.
And I came down, and he's kind of laying on his side, kind of like, what the heck?
But her story immediately aroused suspicion among the other first responders.
The story that she's given is that she last talked to him at 5:30. He's stiff, rigor mortis, like his jaw's starting to lock up. There's no way that she talked to him at 5:30. No way.
She said that she
As other officers arrived, they made more strange and unsettling discoveries.
handcuffs here. It's like a webcam right there. I didn't even notice that.
Hot sauce?
What the hell?
Refrigerator and the freezer have locks with a key to get in.
It's just everything in there is weird. There's webcams all over the place in the basement. I mean, if you go into the bathroom, it'll sit there and...
That's weird.
When confronted, Shanda explained that Timothy had been diagnosed with autism and other developmental disorders.
He was a difficult child to deal with. That was sort of the explanation for some of the locks and some of the cameras.
Police also interviewed two other individuals present in the house when Timothy died. his younger brother, whom we'll refer to as G, and his older half-brother, Paul.
All right. The four of you live here?
Normally it would be it was.
They had interviewed him, and he had sort of told kind of the same story in terms of Timothy had been on a hunger strike, and Timothy was a difficult child, and things of that nature.
Initially, investigators ran into a dead end when they inspected the many webcams scattered throughout the house.
Ultimately, what we learned is that that data could not be retrieved either because it was off, on servers in countries that we couldn't touch, or it had been deleted.
When investigators asked Shanda to come to the Norton Shores Police Department to give a more extensive statement, they hit a wall.
She arrived with an attorney who indicated that she was not prepared to make a statement at that point, as is her right, obviously.
With Shanda no longer cooperating, investigators were left trying to piece together a series of sinister clues to solve the mystery of Timothy's death. Hot sauce in odd locations, locks on the refrigerator and freezer, a basement filled with prying webcams, including one that monitored a small closet with an external lock.
I don't think anybody knew what was happening inside that house.
That is, until the interview with G.
I recall that day actually quite vividly. I was just getting ready to sit down to dinner, and I got a call from a friend of mine. She had conducted the interview with the minor child who was in the home, and she called me because she was just absolutely floored. She just could not believe what she was hearing.
The interviewer asked G a series of carefully structured questions. G's answers would give shocking insight into the sinister clues investigators had found in Shanda's home.
Before Timothy lived here, he lived with his own family, and he actually did some bad stuff.
He was 8 years old at the time, had seen most of what had taken place, despite Shanda's efforts to try to shield him from some of it.
You said you don't want to talk about Timothy and your mom?
I don't want to talk about those two because bad boys with mamas do not mix.
They are asking questions in such a way as to elicit a truthful response. And in every regard, G's answers to those questions to sort of check the boxes for her so that she believed that he was being honest about it and talking about this basically a house of horrors that was going on inside the home.
What would you do to be a bad boy?
Like, talk to me, try to sneak food, try to sneak some water. And one of his punishments, where every time he did a bad boy thing, he gets a dose of hot sauce. A hot spicy sauce.
Yeah. And you said to me, so who decided what the punishments were going to be?
Mama.
Everything was monitored, everything was measured, everything was controlled by her down to what he was eating.
Do you guys have a camera in your house?
Yes, we have some cameras.
Okay, what are the cameras for?
They're for watching Timothy before he died today. And Mama would be on the cameras and watch Timothy as hard as she can, even if she gets tired. But the once she's no longer tired of watching him, she watches him again.
You said you thought some punishments were the reason Timothy died.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this one was one of them because it was uncomfortable. But over time, I think he had to do this in his small room.
While G's testimony was chilling, prosecutors needed more proof before they could charge Shanda. Then, a pivotal discovery blew the case wide open.
I didn't really check this one.
As it turns out, the camera that was in the closet actually did have a tiny micro SD card in it. I don't know if they just didn't realize that it was in there and didn't remove it and didn't destroy it, but for whatever reason, it was still in that camera when it was seized by the police. So we ultimately did get video footage from inside that closet.
The extremely disturbing video showed the final moments of Timothy's life and directly contradicted the story that Shanda had told police.
Yeah, your belt. My belt. I just want to make it look like he's in that bed. Oh, I don't. Oh, my God. Yeah.
And then the medical examiner's report came in.
The autopsy ultimately revealed that the cause of death was malnutrition, extreme malnutrition combined with some unusual signs that you wouldn't expect. There was signs of hypothermia, which initially there was no explanation as to why he would be suffering from hypothermia. This was the middle of the summer.
Convinced they had enough evidence to charge Shanda with murder, prosecutors issued an arrest warrant.
We made the determination that we were going to charge her with open murder and first-degree child abuse for the death of Timothy Ferguson.
But to secure a murder conviction, prosecutors faced a daunting challenge, proving Shanda deliberately caused Timothy's death. That's where Paul came in.
The sound is kind of messed up.
We made the decision, it was within 2 or 3 days of her arrest, to see if he would cooperate with the prosecution here to ultimately to get to our goal, which was to convict Shanda of the murder here.
So how long do you think you were spending in that closet? Couple of weeks, maybe.
If Paul agreed to testify against his mother, prosecutors agreed to recommend to the judge a sentence of between 9 and 15 years in prison.
People might say, well, you didn't necessarily need to work with Paul. I'd push back on that. Ultimately, him presenting himself to the jury in such a way as to show, like, yes, I did these things, but to sort of put a far more human face on it than frankly, that Shanda was able to do in any of her testimony or any of her efforts to fight these charges.
When we return, Shanda Vander Ark goes on trial for the child abuse and murder of her teenage son, Timothy. After the emaciated body of Timothy Ferguson was found at his mother Shanda Vander Ark's home, an autopsy revealed he died from extreme malnutrition and hypothermia. As Shanda's murder trial began, the prosecution wasted no time in laying out the shocking details in the case against her.
How does a 15-year-old child die as a result of malnutrition? How is a 15-year-old child 63 pounds under the average weight? How is a 15-year-old child in literally the 0th percentile for weight? He didn't just become 69 pounds overnight. He got that way over an extended period of time. And he got that way because the people, or primarily the person who was supposed to care for him, wasn't doing that. You don't have to take my word for it. You will hear in the text messages between Paul Ferguson and Shanda Vander Ark the extent of the horrors they inflicted upon Timothy.
Due to the horrific nature of the alleged abuse, there would be no plea deal. The prosecution would only accept one outcome.
Our objective, obviously, right from the start, was to obtain a first-degree murder conviction through that felony murder process, which would mean that the judge would have no discretion, that the judge would have to impose a mandatory life without parole sentence.
The only person standing between Shanda and life in prison was her defense attorney, Fred Johnson.
He's the head of the public defender office in the county of Muskegon. He's a very good attorney. He makes great connections with juries, and he's really just an excellent attorney to deal with.
The feeling was very much mutual.
He is highly experienced, highly skilled, highly organized. He is a very difficult prosecutor to face across the hall because he's not going to make any mistakes.
In addition to mutual respect, the two attorneys had something else in common. They both knew Shanda Vander Ark.
She had been a clerk for one of the judges here in the county, and I had met her in that capacity.
I first met Shanda Vander Ark about a year or so before Timothy passed away. No indication from any interaction I had with her leading up to that point that she was just basically a prison guard, that she just kept her child imprisoned.
Now Shanda was being tried for murder in the very court where she used to work. And Johnson found himself in the unenviable position of defending someone who many considered to be a monster.
In your opening statements, the prosecutor goes first, and he's just created that person with the horns. My client will take the stand. You'll find out she's a highly intelligent person. So what you're trying to do is bring them back. She was clerking for judges. She was working and studying, and she was this close to achieving lifelong goals. What I wanted to do was humanize my client. I wanted them to think of her as a human being. Then she gets a call from her ex-husband. I'm putting Timothy out, the victim. You want him, or he's going to protect services. She takes him and sends him to me. I don't want my son and sister. Send them to me.
Unfortunately for the defense, the jury was about to hear detailed testimony that would call into doubt the basic humanity of both Shanda and her older son, Paul. One of the prosecution's most critical witnesses was the Muskegon County medical examiner, Dr. Joyce DeYoung.
From the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth.
Dr. DeYoung's role was to be able to tell the jury what physiologically took place that caused him to die. And she was able to determine that by conducting the autopsy. In your opinion, what was the cause of Timothy Ferguson's death?
His cause of death was dehydration and extreme emaciation due to malnutrition and starvation. He had really a loss of all of his body fat. His cheeks were very narrow. You could see him count all of his ribs. And on his back, he had started getting some pressure sores because there wasn't a lot of padding in between his bones and his skin as well. So where those areas had pressure, the skin was starting to break down.
But while dehydration and starvation were the main causes of Timothy's death, there was another contributing factor that initially made no sense.
There's another significant contributing condition, and that was something called exogenous hypothermia, meaning hypothermia, but it was from outside sources.
The internal examination is what really reveals the signs of hypothermia that we now know is associated with the ice bath that he was in, and that he was in an ice bath for about 12 hours, basically just hours before he passes away. Did you also render an opinion of the manner of death for Timothy Ferguson?
The manner of death is best classified as homicide. This death was caused by the actions of others to do harm or cause death.
While the chief medical examiner had provided the scientific explanation for why Timothy had died, it would be Shanda's own words, captured in thousands of text messages to her eldest son, Paul, that would paint the clearest picture of who it was that killed him.
The text messages for us really gave us a window into what was taking place. Timothy's every move was monitored somehow, whether that was through the cameras that were in the home or whether it was through Paul.
While at work, Shanda would monitor Timothy's every move and then direct Paul by text message to punish him whenever he misbehaved.
The text messages between those two were pretty damning evidence that prosecutors discovered. It showed a 6-month span of what they talked about, at least through text messages, as far as how Timothy was going to be punished, why he was going to be punished.
One of Shanda's favorite punishments was forcing Timothy to eat bread soaked in fiery hot sauce.
How is everything? Did you make him eat his bread with hot sauce?
I was just about to get up to get it. How many?
4 he has to eat with hot sauce. He's allowed another 4 without hot sauce, but he has to do the hot sauce first.
She would also punish Timothy by making him stand with his arms behind his head for hours on end.
Timothy is against the wall till you get home. Please clear the food and wrappers he stole earlier when you didn't set the motion sensor properly.
He would have to stand with his arms behind his head and had an alarm on so that if he moved, Paul would know or Shanda would know because she was monitoring from her phone.
She also directed Paul to control Timothy's access to food.
Timothy is no longer allowed anywhere near the fridge, freezer, or pantry or any other place where food is. You and I will have to get things for G.
Even food scraps were off limits.
What did he eat? I ate my burger already.
He ate the crust.
Go try and make him throw up, please. He's not hungry. He's just being a jerk.
She even instructed Paul to control Timothy's sleep.
He turned away from the camera, so I can't see if he's trying to sleep or not.
He's not.
If you're going to be there, why don't you go ahead and run another cold bath and stick him in it?
Paul would add ice cubes to the bath and forced Timothy to stay in it for hours. Eventually, Shanda restricted Timothy's movements to a closet she called the small room, often confining him there in arm and leg shackles.
That was Timothy's room. That was where Timothy slept. He did not sleep on his bed. He was sleeping in that closet on a tarp. There wasn't bedding, there wasn't a pillow, there wasn't anything. It was a tarp and a camera, and that was all that was inside that closet.
As Timothy's condition worsened, Shanda became convinced that he was faking it.
Crazy idea. Ask G if he wants some pizza rolls, and if he does, take one downstairs and offer it to Timothy and see what he does. Put it right in front of his mouth, but be ready to yank it back if he tries to eat it. Hold it right in front of his lips. How much do you want to bet that he's going to try to eat it?
A lot.
Agreed. Please do that and get back down there to make sure that he's not falling asleep.
As a parent, how does it even cross your mind to even think to do that? He's literally starving to death, and you're tempting him with food to see if he gets a reaction.
When we return, Timothy's older brother, Paul, an alleged accomplice to his own brother's murder, takes the stand.
Can you describe what was happening at that time and how he was restricted from getting access to food?
He was sneaking food that was not necessary at that time.
Was a reporter brutally murdered for digging too deep?
His death was absolutely devastating.
The suspect, a former politician and subject of the victim's story on corruption.
Can you tell us anything?
Now will Robert Tellez go from elected official to convicted killer?
Once all the evidence comes out, it'll be clear as day.
Is it possible that bad press is a motive for murder?
The investigative reporter murder trial. Live coverage begins next week on CourtTV.com.
The prosecution had initially used text messages to show how Shanda Vander Ark directed her son Paul to abuse Timothy. Now, they called Paul to the stand to show firsthand the impact of that abuse.
We'd already presented the text messages, so I didn't want to rehash all of that, but I wanted to really show it's not just words on a page. These things were actually taking place. As far as you know, from the time that Timothy came to live with you in May of 2021 in Norton Shores to the time of his death, was Timothy allowed to even leave the house?
No.
He was kept completely isolated. Even the people in the neighborhood didn't even know that Timothy existed because he was not allowed to go out into the front yard.
Paul's testimony vividly corroborated some of the more disturbing text messages shown to the jury by the prosecution.
Paul was the enforcer. He was the person who had been carrying out a lot of the punishments that Shanda had chosen to inflict upon Timothy.
At one point, she had me heat up a pizza roll to see if he would be responsive to enticement.
Did you actually do that?
Yes.
And what did you, so describe for the jury exactly what you did with that pizza roll with Timothy in the tub.
I held it close, and when he responded, as per instruction, I was to pull it away from him.
So did you actually do this?
Yes.
So you actually held a pizza roll in front of him to see if he would respond? Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
I know it's difficult. Did he respond?
Yes, sir.
What did you do when he tried to respond?
I had to, or as I was told, I pulled it away.
So we didn't get to eat the pizza roll? I think Paul was being completely honest and open with us. He never tried to shy away from it. He never tried to say, you know, even to minimize his role in things.
Paul also provided firsthand testimony of the systematic abuse Shanda directed at Timothy, including extreme confinement in the closet where he would ultimately pass away.
Were there any restrictions on his movement inside the closet, or was it he could move around however he wanted inside the closet?
There were restrictions. Hands on his head, normally.
Hands on his head, is that what you indicated?
Yes.
Was that some form of discipline for him?
Yes. On his knees and against the corner of the wall of the room.
For how long would he have to do these things?
Several hours.
Were there also times when he was required to stand against the wall?
Yes, sir.
And when he would stand against the wall, how long were we talking about that he would be required to do that?
Hours, sometimes overnight.
But most importantly for the prosecution, Paul's testimony crucially and consistently established Shanda as the primary instigator of Timothy's tortured death.
Can you describe what was happening at that time and how he was restricted from getting access to food?
He was sneaking food that was not necessary at that time, and it was solved by placing locks on the fridge, freezer, and pantry.
When we say he was sneaking food that wasn't necessary, who would make that determination that it wasn't necessary?
Shanda.
Paul's testimony was also crucial in showing that it was Shanda who demanded Timothy be given the ice bath. That would be a major factor in his death.
At some point, were you instructed to do something with him because he wouldn't wake up?
Put him in an ice bath.
And did you do that?
Yes.
How did you get him from the closet to the bathroom with the...
I had to drag him.
Was your mother giving you instructions on what to do with him while he was in that tub then, at that point in time?
Yes, sir.
What was she telling you to do?
Make him uncomfortable.
You said that you were supposed to make sure that he stayed uncomfortable. How were you supposed to make him uncomfortable in an ice bath?
Put his body at an odd angle that was not a comfortable position to be in.
When he was in the tub, when he tried to rest his head somewhere?
On his shoulder, yes, or the lip of the tub.
Was that allowed?
No.
Paul left work around 6 p.m. It would be the last time he would see his brother alive. Later that night, Shanda dragged Timothy from the bath to his small room.
I think it's actually the most disturbing thing I've ever seen. She holds his mouth shut, and when he breathes through his nose, she says, "See, dummy, you don't have to breathe through your mouth." And leaves him. And that is literally the last human contact that Timothy has with somebody before he passes away. When did you next become aware that something was happening with Timothy?
The next morning.
They go into the closet basically to wake him up, and obviously he's deceased at that point.
From that moment on, Paul becomes an eyewitness to the cover-up of a murder.
Do you remember what your mother said when you asked her if we should call 911?
She said no.
The second video recovered from the small room captures Shanda coaching Paul on what their cover story should be.
Before 911 is called, was there some discussion about a hunger strike?
Yes.
What was the discussion about the hunger strike at that point?
Shanda said to say that he'd gone on a hunger strike.
Where's that?
We found him on the bed.
Seems obvious, but who is she referring to?
Timothy.
He was very upfront. His story never got mixed up. Paul was just kind of the icing on the top to really come through and say, yep, these are the things that we did, and just hit everything home.
Coming up, Shanda Vander Ark takes the stand in an attempt to defend the indefensible.
Did you intend to hurt Timothy?
No, never.
Did you know he was being hurt?
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
Make your free TV even better with Tablo.
Switching to Tablo has really been a money saver.
Without a monthly subscription was amazing.
Order today at TabloTV.com.
Paul, Timothy's older brother, provided damning testimony against his mother, detailing the horrific abuse he inflicted at the direction of his mother, including starvation, the force-feeding of hot sauce, and ice baths.
Shanda's defense lawyer, Fred Johnson, understood what he was up against.
The photographs were just horrific. These were the type of photographs that defense attorneys worried that the prosecutor is going to stand up and say, ladies and gentlemen, here are the photographs, and then sit down, because they don't need to do anything else beyond that.
The first step in Johnson's strategy to save Shanda from dying behind bars was to shift the focus away from Shanda and towards her son, Paul, who even the prosecution framed as the enforcer.
He was central to the case for us because he allowed us to give someone to the jury who had been crucial in the death of this child, for one thing.
After all, it was Paul who actually carried out the bulk of the punishments inflicted on Timothy.
According to your testimony and other things you said, you're the one who put the hot sauce in this boy's mouth.
Her orders, yes.
Timothy's mouth. You're the one who put the cuffs, the bracelets on, the ties on it, right?
Her orders.
You're the one who put him in the cold baths, correct?
Her orders.
You're the one who said, in one of those texts at you, that you've never wanted to beat somebody up. Beat somebody, I forget the exact word. Beat somebody so bad in your entire life. You said that per her orders.
No.
You also said that if something happens, I'm going to kill him. Was that her orders too?
No.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. But you're not charged with first-degree murder, are you?
No.
He was the enforcer. That he enjoyed inflicting the pain he inflicted on this boy. That he was the one who knew better. I sat here and I listened. I don't recall any other point where you told her no to anything she asked you to do. Do you remember any other point where you text, where we can show it in the text, where I told her, no, I'm not going to do that, Mom?
No.
From the standing in the corner to the hands on the head to the hot sauce to the shackles. Was his leg shackled? We found this metal shackle, this chain, leg chain. Were you familiar with those?
A little bit.
Did you put those on him?
When I was directed to.
When you were directed to? How many times were you directed to?
Right up to you.
Would you be surprised to know that there is no text where you even discuss the leg shackles, much less putting them on him? Would you be surprised by that?
Very.
He seemed to enjoy what he's doing. And did he mean for his brother to die? I don't think he did, but I have a harder time with him because I think he knew.
But there was really only one person who had the ability to explain away the text messages in Paul's testimony: Shanda herself.
In this case, my recommendation was not to testify, but she did testify. So ultimately, I tell her what my opinion is, but this is for all the marbles, and if the client wants to swing for the fences, I don't try to prevent them from doing so.
State your name for the record, spelling your first name and last.
Shanda, S-H-A-N-D-A, Vander Ark, V-A-N-D-E-R, space capital A-R-K.
From the beginning of her testimony, Shanda sought to give innocent explanations for actions the prosecution had cast in an evil light.
Why did you have all those monitors and cameras in your home?
When Timothy came to live with us, his stepmother informed me that they had motion sensors. They weren't as tech savvy as I was. I worked in tech before law school. I worked in tech support for several years. But they had motion sensors and she told me that she didn't sleep at night. She only slept when he was at school because he was into everything.
What was your intent when you would administer punishments to Timothy?
To get him to behave.
Was it ever your intent to harm him?
No, absolutely not.
And what was the point of the hot sauce?
Because we had tried multiple other discipline methods, and he thought maybe that would get him to stop misbehaving.
Okay.
He suggested it to me, and at that point, I was so wrung out, I was willing to try just about anything.
All right.
And then caring for Timothy became even more difficult when Shanda's husband suffered a stroke.
I don't mean to suggest that I have empathy for her, because I don't, but it would be a very difficult situation to be in, where if you have another person who's in the home who is helping you with everything, who then, because of the stroke, he then leaves the home, and now suddenly you're dealing with 3 kids, one of whom has some special needs. That would be a very difficult thing to deal with.
Let's do the hard stuff here. Jury's seen pictures of Timothy. We've all seen pictures of Timothy at the time of his death. How could you not know he was that? How could you not know?
Honestly, I was barely functioning. I missed a lot. I hate it because, I feel like a complete failure, but there was things that I just didn't see. There was a lot that I didn't see, unfortunately.
When we come back, the prosecution confronts Shanda with a photo of her dead son, and the jury returns with a verdict.
Yes, sir.
You look like that when you put him in the bathtub?
Was a reporter brutally murdered for digging too deep?
His death was absolutely devastating.
The suspect, the former politician and subject of the victim's story on corruption.
Can you tell us anything?
Now will Robert Tellez go from elected official to convicted killer?
Once all the evidence comes out, it'll be clear as day.
Is it possible that bad press is a motive for murder?
The investigative reporter murder trial. Live coverage begins next week on Court TV.
Facing life in prison without the possibility of parole, Shanda Vander Ark took the stand to argue that the death of her son Timothy was a tragic accident and not cold-blooded murder. But in his cross-examination, the prosecutor swiftly went on the attack.
My objective with the cross-examination was to start by having her talk about herself. Remind the jury again of your educational background.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree, magna cum laude, and then I also have a Juris Doctorate.
Was it cum laude? No, summa cum laude from law school. So, just all these things. But my real purpose here is to show this is an intelligent person. And then I wanted to talk about the dog training. You also train service animals, correct?
I do.
And when you train service animals, is crate training involved at all? Because I was going to tie that back into, and did almost immediately, and she didn't even really see it coming, to talk about the hot sauce thing. So you never actually grabbed a dog, forced its mouth open, and poured hot sauce down its throat, have you?
No.
Never put hot sauce on a piece of food and then fed it to them, make them eat it, have you?
No, because I don't give my dogs human food. You can't do that with service animals.
No, but you could put it on dog food, didn't you?
I guess I've never even thought about that, honestly.
So it never occurred to you to use hot sauce, enforcing the use of hot sauce on a dog, but it occurred to you to use that as a form of punishment for your 14-year-old child?
It was Paul's idea, but yes, I was at my wit's end at that time.
And, she was just caught flat-footed at that point, and he liked hot sauce. Well, then it's not a punishment, is it?
The prosecutor had one more surprise in store for Shanda. During cross-examination, Shanda was now claiming she gave Timothy a warm bath the night he died.
If you're claiming you put your child in the tub hours before he dies of malnutrition, we all know what he looks like. He would have had to have looked like that when you put him in the tub.
So Robert selected a few crime scene photos of Timothy and walked over to confront Shanda.
So I walk up, I set the photographs down, and again, these are photos that she saw the week before and did not react to. This is hours before he dies, right?
Yes, sir.
You look like that when you put him in the bathtub? She doesn't quite react at first, and then she, I'll say, pretends to throw up.
Those who were sitting close to Shanda when she appeared to get sick didn't buy it.
Sorry.
From the jury's point of view, if you're going to do that, you better vomit it in that box, because if you don't, they think you're deceiving them. And that's exactly what they thought. And I know because I asked them.
The prosecution saved one of its strongest pieces of evidence against Shanda for last. Video from inside the small room showing her continuing to mentally and physically abuse Timothy during the last moments of his life. Prosecutors feared that showing the video might overly bias the jury, so they had an officer who watched it describe the horror it contained.
Did it record any audio from Ms. Vander Ark as she was pulling Timothy into the closet and positioning him on the floor?
It did. I could hear Ms. Vander Ark tell Timothy that he is pathetic, and then adds, but I already knew that as she was dragging him in. He can be seen, his chest rising, lowering very slightly. small little movements, and then there is a point in time where you stop seeing that, and his body just kind of relaxes, and it appears to me that he has died at that point.
After 3 days of testimony, the jury retired to consider Shanda's fate. They returned with a verdict in just over an hour.
Count 1, charging open murder involving the death of Timothy Ferguson. We find her guilty of first-degree felony murder. Count 2, first-degree child abuse. We find her guilty of first-degree child abuse.
The judge spoke directly to Shanda before sentencing her to prison for the rest of her natural life.
I'm choosing not to remember your son dead, looking like a Holocaust victim, but I'm choosing to remember like that. That's how he was. A beautiful child with a lot of life in his eyes. That's who your son was. I'm choosing to remember him as a happy individual with life. And that's the picture I want people to remember of your son. You took that from him. You took it from him.
Coming up, Paul learns his fate, and Shanda prepares to appeal her conviction. After Shanda Vander Ark was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, the spotlight turned to her son, Paul, who many believed bore equal, if not greater, responsibility for Timothy's death. In February of 2024, Paul Ferguson appeared in this Muskegon County courtroom to face sentencing after pleading guilty to first-degree child abuse in the death of his brother Timothy.
What I ultimately asked the judge to do was to impose a sentence for Paul that fell within the Michigan sentencing guidelines.
For Paul, that meant a minimum sentence of 9 to 15 years, and he came prepared to express remorse.
If I could do it all again and do it right, I would. I feel I will pay for my choices and yet never feel better because he's still gone.
Paul probably thought he'd pay 9 to 15 years for his actions against Timothy, but the judge had other ideas.
I think all of us would like to believe that this is a product of manipulation, that this is simply somebody doing something that they were told to do, that they were afraid. And I think it's clear to me that Mr. Ferguson, although he says that he was scared of his mother, or there's an allegation to that standpoint, I find that just the opposite to be true based on those text messages. I don't think you have empathy. I don't think you have any emotion whatsoever. And that's what scares the court. And believe me, I have tried to sit here and try to think, well, maybe Mr. Ferguson's not as bad as Mom. I think you're just as bad, if not worse. You could have gone to a neighbor and said, hey, my mom's abusing him. You could have grabbed him and got him out of there. You could have done any number of things to stop this, and you chose not to. Your own brother. Based on all that, it's a sentence of the court. You serve 30 years to 100 years, Michigan Department of Corrections. Credit for 592 days you've already served.
It was clear from that sentencing that the judge held Paul basically just as responsible for Timothy's death as Shanda. And I have to respect the judge for that.
So the judge literally gave him 4 times plus more than the sentencing guidelines usually allow. And he pointed out on the record why. And quite frankly, it's still a deal. And he'll do 30. That's terrible for him. But it's a better deal than he gave his brother.
Paul Ferguson is currently serving his sentence at Oaks Correctional Facility in Manistee, Michigan, and won't be eligible for parole for another 30 years. Shanda Vander Ark is serving life without parole at a women's prison in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Both are appealing their sentences. Timothy may be gone, but his death did bring his older brother and sister together to honor his memory and speak on his behalf during Shanda's sentencing. Their message couldn't have been more clear.
If I can't have my brother back, she shouldn't have her freedom back. And lastly, I want everyone to know that to those who knew him, even that wouldn't feel like justice.
I want the woman who killed my little brother to face the highest punishment possible.
I want her detained for the rest of her life so she can't hurt anyone else.